Hi, I'm Faith. Welcome to your gluteus workout. It's my new favorite word that just kind of fell out of my mouth last week. Combination of booty and glutes. So we're gonna work we're gonna really try to wake up some sleepy gluteus today. It's a common issue that people's butts, their glutes, aren't working as optimally as possible. And when that happens, there's a host of other issues that could come along with it, like pain in the back, even transferring up to pain in the neck, issues with gait, lack of core strength because of lack of support from underneath from the seat. So just to name a few, a few issues that could come up with lack of glute strength, lack of glute activation, and awakeness. So we're gonna see if we can get them awake and alert. For this class, for this session, you need a VersaLoop or some sort of loop minus power systems, and then some sort of roller. You don't necessarily need a long one, it's fine if yours is short. So we're definitely going to try to get the glutes even a little bit sore for the next, tomorrow or for the days to come. But we're also going to take some pretty mellow movements and check in with the breath as well, and musculature that might be either under or over firing that also has some influence on the glutes. So particularly in the under or over firing, we're looking at the psoas, which runs from the front of the spine, the lower ribs, the front of the spine, all the way down to the inside of the thigh. Big, complicated muscle that connects the torso to the legs, to the limbs there at the bottom. And then also the TFL. So TFL is a smaller muscle that's right in here, kind of just to the front of your side pocket, and tightness or kind of just any dysfunction with either of these muscles can contribute to those sleepy glutes. So we'll address those as well. We're gonna start without any equipment. And we're gonna start looking at both the TFL, the tensor fasciae lata right there, and this big iliopsoas muscle there. Take your hands, those of you familiar with me know that I love the hands as feedback, and they're going to be very valuable for you today. You're going to get very familiar with your gluteus and use your hands as feedback to see how and how much and where they're firing or not firing. So for starters, your hands are going to give you feedback about where your rib cage and your pelvis are in space and in relation to each other, and whether they are still or moving. So fingertips on the hip bones and on the ribs, and just nice and easy, open your knees away from each other and then bring them all the way towards each other. You can widen your feet just a little bit more than you kind of normally would here maybe. Let your knees fall away from each other and let your knees fall in towards each other. Then maybe take your hands a little bit lower, so right kind of in your front hip creases, and see what's going on there. Just as you do this movement, can that musculature stay relatively easy, or is there a lot of engagement or firing happening? And you don't have to get too caught up on whether it is the psoas or it is the TFL that's firing. You're just looking for changes in tone. It doesn't matter what it is right now, whether it's the tendons or the muscles or which muscles. You're just looking for changes in tone there. And for this particular moment, you're just looking to be as easy as possible. There will be some changes in tone, the tone of the soft tissue under your hands. There'll be some changes, but not very much. You're looking for really minimal changes there. So just working through technically external rotation and internal rotation. And our glutes are mainly hip extensors. They draw our hip into our back body, into our back space, but they also have an influence and work in internal rotation. This is internal rotation and adduction, external rotation and abduction, abduction. And also what you're checking for, which is really dramatic on my body due to an old injury, repetitive old injuries, is asymmetries from right to left. With some of this stuff, we're really going to take some time. Some of the seemingly simpler movements, we're really going to take some time to drop into it. Last one like this. And then your feet are going to move into that parallel hip joint track. So in the front of the pelvis, the hip joints are narrower than our outer hips. They're always quite a bit narrower than our outer hips. So the heels and the feet are aligned right at those hip joints. You're going to extend one leg long, so heel slides. Extend one leg long. Stretch it all the way long, thinking of lengthening through the front of the pelvis without moving the pelvis. And then start back in by bending the knee first. Send the knee up towards the ceiling. Send the femur bone, this long bone that runs from the hip socket all the way up to the knee. Send it deep into the hip socket. So you're trying to drop, as if my arm's that bone, you're trying to drop it deep to the back of the hip socket, or the back of the acetabulum at the top. And you're gonna alternate sides. Start with the knee drawing up towards the ceiling first, which sends the top of the femur deep into the hip socket. And we're gonna do probably 4 or 6 more of these at least. Let's go for 6 more. Like I said, we're gonna take some time with this simpler stuff, because what we're attempting to do with this class is to work with the possible tightness or dysfunction of the TFL and the psoas, to work with that and to get out of some kind of classic movement patterns that I know some of you hold that prohibit you from fully accessing your glute strength. Knee goes up towards the ceiling first, so that sends the head of the femur deep. That is part of the productive functional psoas movement. Stretch long, lengthen the thigh down towards the floor. Some of you may not be able to get it all the way towards the floor, but in that direction, and then knee up first. And that may seem a little obvious, but if you don't think about the knee up towards the ceiling, the body's response is to start at the hip and just pull that leg in, and it's a little bit different. The psoas, you won't feel the difference necessarily, but the muscle firing will be different. And that's a really big thing, and it's kind of the part of the Pilates difference is that we look at the anticipatory muscle firing. And then nice and easy heel stays towards seat go through marching. So you're gonna let this leg fold in and let it go deep again. Let the femur drop down into the hip socket and then set it down, switch sides. Drop the femur deep into the hip socket. And this whole time you're looking for stability through the pelvis, through the rib cage, not a lot of rocking side to side or tilting the pelvis front and back. And just letting the psoas feel safe through this hip flexion. It's woo-woo. There's a lot of woo-woo out there on the psoas, and it's a little woo-woo, but it's also anatomically based there. Let the psoas just kind of get to know its function. Its function is not to keep you from using your butt. Not at all. And then just hug your knees into your chest and rock a little bit side to side. I'm gonna grab the roller and have it handy. Have it like on the other side between your heels and your seat. And then grab your butt. Grab your butt, and you're gonna go through baby hip roll here. So you're gonna sink your abdominals down, tuck your hips under, press your feet into the mat. Your hamstrings up here will start to engage, and then squeeze your butt. I said that wrong. Let me start that again. So sink your abdominals down, tuck your hips under, actively squeeze your butt, clench your butt cheeks together, squeeze your butt, find your hands in your glutes. See if you can find some muscle tone. It doesn't have to be a ton, it doesn't have to be 100%, but see if you can find a change in tone in there. And then just lift your hips off the floor. And then roll it down and release. As you exhale, sink your abdominals down, tuck your hips under, squeeze your butt, and just unweight the back of your pelvis. And get handsy with yourself, get familiar with yourself. Check in for that muscle tone and release. So we are looking for muscle tone through the back body, from the glutes originate there at the top of the pelvis, all the way down to the top of the thighs and wrap around the sides. We're looking for muscle tone through the glutes. We're looking for an ease through the TFL. So those front muscles, are you feeling big ropes form right here? Or relatively little happening there, which is what we're aiming for. Now put your feet on the roller, hands on the butt, squeeze your butt and just lift your hips. So you're unweighting your pelvis still, but now you're also unweighting most of your back because you're doing a hip lift rather than a roll. Release. Use your exhale, press down into the roller, not pulling it to you or pushing it away, really evenly pushing down, lift and lower. Use your hands, check in with your glutes, squeeze them to lift and lower, release them completely. The release is just as important as the engagement. We don't want to have the glutes firing all the time. We want to be able to use them when we need them, use them when we want them to fire, but then otherwise release. That's the beautiful homeostasis point that we're looking for with our body. The muscles are there, ready to go when we need them, but they're not over firing. They're not always active or on. One more like this and you're going to stay up. Stay lifted. So my hips are just barely hovered. You're going to translate, which means move to the side, your pelvis, like a typewriter. You just move it straight to the side and set it down. Lift it up, slide it straight across to the other side, so off center, and set it down. Lift, slide across, and set down. Lift, slide across, and set down. Just off center, it doesn't have to be huge. Slide and lower. Lift, slide, lower. 2 more. And then just kind of wiggle yourself back to center. Extend your legs long, keep them heavy on the roller. It's kind of like a double heel slide from what we did earlier. Really easy through here, easy through your TFL, easy through your hip flexors as you drag the roller back in with heavy legs. Do that just a few more times. Let it lengthen. Pull your knees up first and draw it back in. 2 more. Let it lengthen. Knees up. Draw it back in. And then put one foot, let's say right foot, put right foot underneath the roller, like toes are almost underneath the roller on your near side of the roller. You're going to do a hip lift. Squeeze your butt press up and hold here. You're holding. You're seeing preferably pretty even tone through both glutes. You can definitely feel it to check in. And then lift your left leg, so your roller leg, put the weight onto your floor foot, lift your roller leg up. Hips can lower a little bit, that's fine. As long as they stay level from right to left, they don't have to be at the very top possibility of your range there. Very slowly lower your hips down. Do that one more time. Left foot on the roller, press your hips up. Both glutes are engaged, all glutes are engaged. There's more than 2. Lift your left leg and hold. You can lower your hips a little bit if that feels better and more even. So you have 2 glute max, left and right, but then you've got glute min and glute med. Slowly lower. Eccentric contraction. Try to control the descent all the way down. And then you will switch sides. So right foot on the roller, left foot on the floor, press up, hold. Find that evenness, even though the feet are offset, that evenness through the hips, the drawing down of the ribs, long diagonal from the shoulders to the knees, both glutes engaged. You can lower the hips a little if that feels better for you, to then lift the leg and hold. There is a wrapping, I feel it as a wrapping in and under of the standing leg, the glute med on the left side. Slowly hinge at the hips, try to lower the pelvis evenly, eccentric or lengthening contraction of your glute muscles and other extensors on your left side. We have one more. Press up. You are engaged. Lengthen through your low back, both glutes engaged. Arms wherever is helpful, really. You can press them firmly down on the floor here as you lift the leg. That can be helpful. As long as they don't push your ribs up, feel free to use them. Press them down. Slowly lower. Cross your right ankle over your left thigh and then draw it in. Give yourself a little glute stretch. You can roll it around a little bit side to side. I love that here. As you roll it, since your right is on top, as you roll it over to the left, you might feel a little bit more intensity. You can always use your hand to press away. Switch sides. And then come up. We're gonna see if we can get a little roll out of the TFL. So remember, come on to one side first, and this muscle runs about the size of my hand, a little bit smaller, but roughly the size of my hand, and they're between the direct side seam and the direct front of your thigh. So right there in between the front and the side, and where you feel your hip bone in the front, and there's no soft tissue, there's no muscle flesh over it. It is just a little bit lower than that. And so rolling through that area, staying off of your hip bone, and trying to soften into it. Don't forget to breathe. Switching to the other side. Just using your arms as they are helpful to push and pull. And then draw back into child's pose. And you could use your roller for your head. You could also bring your head just down onto the floor. You're gonna really tuck, silly little thing. You're gonna really tuck your legs in underneath you so that you have some compression in your front body. You can even tuck your arms in kind of there too, depending on what's most comfortable, but you wanna find some compression in the front body so that you are, not a Pilates friendly word, but so that you're forced to breathe more into your side ribs, into your back body, even into your upper shoulders here and kind of towards the back of your neck. So take several more breaths like that. I'm going to sit up just so you can hear me better. You're just in child's pose, taking several breaths, getting some expansion in your rib cage. Your rib cage with each inhale can change its volume. So your abdominals, your belly doesn't change volume, it just changes its shape with breath. With eating and drinking, it can actually change its volume. But with breath, it's just changing its shape. The rib cage, however, can change its volume. This is significant because we're moving this big bony structure of the rib cage and the shoulder girdle. That is the upper torso, the shoulder girdle, including the clavicle and the scapula on the rib cage make up this whole upper bony structure of the torso. And at the end of, not every single one, but most of those bones, there's a joint. At every joint, there's the possibility for movement. So stay in your child's pose or shell stretch and take a few more breaths and see if you can think about allowing those joints to move. It's really subtle, it's very small, it's not like the elbow joint, not like the hip joint or the shoulder joint, but in their own small ways, we're allowing each rib to have some movement at the breastbone and at the spinal attachment. We're allowing them to expand and then to contract, changing the volume, expanding the volume of the rib cage and contracting the volume of the rib cage. This is important for glutes because when we don't breathe fully into that bony upper torso, when we don't allow for that movement, then our breathing muscles, which encompass all parts of the torso, really, our breathing muscles shift around. What's doing the function of breathing shifts around and is not as optimally functional. We start to breathe with our neck muscles, with our upper shoulder muscles. This is not just like holding tension, this is a real thing. We start to try to use the scalenes as breathing muscles up here rather than letting our obliques expand and contract and do that work.
So being able to have that movement, that change of volume in the rib cage is really important. It's not how you always have to breathe, but we need to be able to have that ability. Because when we're trying to breathe up here in our shoulders, that's oftentimes when our psoas gets, not a technical word, but like locked in. Our psoas gets locked in. Our TFL tries to make up for that. And so it gets kind of locked in. Our back muscles try to make up for that and get locked in. And then our pelvis, for a lot of those of you who are doing this video, our pelvis gets a little bit stuck like this in anterior pelvic tilt. And then it's really challenging to go from there all the way into hip extension, which is where our glutes need to be able to go to engage and to fire. All right, come out of child's pose. Come out of your breathing there. And come up onto your knees on the roller. So you're about that hip track width. You're up on your knees, your toes are tucked. And then hands on the hips for starters. And you're gonna lean straight back. You'll feel your abdominal wall engage, hopefully. You'll feel your quads engage. You won't feel pressure or discomfort in your knees, or you'll skip this exercise. And then you're gonna come back up. We're only gonna do 4 of these. So you're hinging at the knees. You're staying long like a board, like a plank from your knees through the top of your head and rising back up. Arms can really be wherever's helpful. This might be helpful to bring your ribs back with you, but press your shoulders forward. And I think, to keep me honest, we have 1 more. Now we're gonna go kind of the other way with it. The top of the head comes forward. We still stay long like a board from the hips to the top of the head. Hips go back towards the heels, and then squeeze the butt, slowly come back up. We're gonna go down on a count of 1. We're gonna come up 3, 2, 1. We're gonna go down 1. We're gonna come up 3, 2, 1. Down, bring it up. 3, 2, 1. Last one like this. Down, up, 3, 2, 1. Reverse it, go down slow. Go down 3, 2. Eccentric, lengthening contraction of the glutes. Fire it up. 1. Go down 3, 2. Spine stays long, chest stays lifted even as you come down. Up quick, down slow, slow. So the chest stays lifted, that's not lifted. This is lifted. Press it up. And as I said in the beginning, your arms just, you utilize your hands on your own body, however is helpful here. Last one. Slow, slow, slow. Fire it up. Come down onto your hands. Untuck your toes, reach your right leg back behind, and make slow circles right at the hip joint. Your clavicles, your collarbones in the front are broad. Your hands are big. Your leg is circling in the biggest circle it can, right up at the acetabulum or the hip joint, without anything else moving. Reverse that circle. It is your butt that lifts the leg right there. It is your butt that controls the descent of the leg. Your abs are working very strongly for stability here, but it's your butt with assistance from your hamstring, switch legs, with assistance from your hamstring that is really driving these circles. Your butt is the engine here. Notice if you're sitting into your right hip as you go around here, if you're kind of sinking or sitting into your right hip. Hug your right hip into your midline, into center. Reverse the direction of your circle. Try not to get carried away with the ankle or the toe. Sometimes we'll just do ankle circles here. So up at the thigh, it's not from the knee, it's not from the ankle, it's not from the toes. The thigh bone circles in the hip socket. Abdominals lift, not moving the leg from the back, moving the leg from the butt. Moving the leg from the back would look like this. Ugh, it's like almost an automatic pain in my back. All right, bring it up. While we have the roller out still, just do a little glutty roll. Don't get too precious with it, don't overthink it, just roll through your butt. And
the side butt. Get the other side. Just give it what I call kind of a global wash, a global massage there, where you're not trying to really isolate into any specific musculature or fascial spots, but just give it that global rub down. And then we're done with the roller. Grab your loop. Bring your legs through it and right up above your knees. Come down onto your side. If you have a yoga block or something, it's about the perfect height for a pillow here. Otherwise, just down on your arm. Lift your bottom waistline. Your spine is long, so it's really common tendency to sit up here with our head forward. Bring your head back in line with the rest of your spine, and make sure that your butt or your hips are in line with the rest of your spine as well. So you're not tucked under here, like tail tucking between the legs, and you're not compressing in your low back. You just have that really nice long neutral through your whole torso, including your head, torso all the way through the head. A little lightness, a little lift up and engagement of the bottom waistline, and the hips are stacked from top to bottom. A little flexion through the feet, and just slowly lift the top leg up and lower it down. This is going to sound really picky and subtle, but try not to externally rotate. So we're only going so far that it feels like the legs can really truly stay parallel, and we're not opening up towards the ceiling with that front shin bone or knee. Technically, there is a little external rotation happening, but that's not the focus. And then hand goes to check in on the TFL. There can be a little firing there, there can be a little engagement, but it's not the main work. The main work is a little further back at the glute med. One more like this. And then the front of the band is going to come so that it's right below your kneecap, and your top leg is going to come straight up from your hip. So now this is your fixed point, and this is wrapped around the back of your thigh to pull your thigh back in extension. Parallel with the top leg, use your hand, check in with your butt. It doesn't have to be a big movement, but you are looking for some muscle tone there, some engagement, some firing. Ground down through, just kind of ground this front leg as your stable point, and then start to circle the top leg, and it's circling back. The emphasis is really on back. A little lift and then back. So now you're trying to truly go, probably for the first time today in class, you're trying to go into extension. You're trying to bring your leg actually into your back space to fire up that glute. Reverse the circle. No dropping of that bottom waistline. It's okay if there's flesh on the floor, but there's some engagement through the bottom musculature. It's not a relaxed position in any part of the body. Now from here, bring the leg back to center. You're going to externally rotate. So turn that foot on a little diagonal. The kneecap also goes up on a little diagonal, and you're pulling up and back and then down in front. Up and back and down in front. Pinky blade slices through the space. Up and back, down in front. Glute. Check in with yourself. Check in with your glute. Last one here. And switch sides. You can do it probably somewhat gracefully, staying strapped up there. So hips are stacked, legs are stacked, bottom waist lifted, ankles gently flexed, and lift up and lower. And as you lift up, you're checking that you're not all TFL, you're not all front of the hip there. Second side is always fun on these ones because the first side, it's almost like a second set for that first side that you worked. I can feel my bottom glute calling uncle already, saying, I already worked. And then the loop is going to go just below the knee on the front leg and just above the knee on the back leg. And the movement is back. Stay parallel with your top leg. The movement is back. So a lot of things to look out for here. One is that you aren't pushing. You're stabilizing through the pelvis, but you don't want to push the hip bone forward. That's kind of fake. That's faking your extension. Your pelvis is neutral. It's right in line with your rib cage. It is a stable point. This little bug won't stay in my ear. All right, start to circle your leg. I've tried all the different little like extenders and holders for the AirPods, and I haven't found one that fits my ears yet, unfortunately. Back with your circling. Back. Back. Reverse direction. Back. Back. And then we've got external rotation. No change at the pelvis, change in the hip socket, and pull up and back, down and front. Pull the pinky blade up and back. Outer edge of the foot cuts through space, up and back. Find some muscle tone in your back body. No rotation through the torso. No rotation through the pelvis included in that torso. Last one. We're going to finish how we started. So on your back, feet a little bit wider than the hips. Just let the knees fall apart. And then let the knees fall together. Let them fall apart and together. 2 more. All right, thank you very much.